So in this video, I'm going to be answering the viewers' questions regarding my time spent in Manchester Crown Court at the trial of the nurse Lucy Letby. Just a little bit of background information before we start this video, just in case you are new to the channel. I attended multiple days of Lucy Letby's cross-examination in court, basically when Lucy Letby took the witness stand, where she was cross-examined by the prosecuting barrister, Nicholas Johnson KC. The next question is from David Edwards 504, and he asks the following. Was there any time that you thought there was a chance of there being reasonable doubt, or was the evidence overwhelming? I guess if we go right back to the start of this trial, when the defence gave their opening speech, talking about the failings at the hospital, the staffing levels, the fact that they had more sick babies between this time period, it seemed initially that the defence may have a fairly strong case. Yet as the trial progressed and we had the experts from the prosecution, and these experts, the medical experts, it wasn't just one individual who was giving a report and saying this is what I believe happened. This person would do a report and then it would be backed up by a number of other medical professionals. So you'd have one report maybe, or two reports, but they'd all be saying pretty much the same thing, as in, I believe that this child died of an injection of air, and this would be confirmed by 2 or 3 or 4 different individuals. Yet when it came to the defence and their time to call their experts and I guess refute or call into question what the prosecution experts had said, there were none. The medical experts for the defence, for whatever reason, were never called. We never saw a medical expert take the stand on behalf of the defence. What we did see, however, was a plumber. And even that, I don't believe, was handled particularly well because, okay, we had this plumber who came in and he said, yes, I've been working at the Countess of Chester Hospital over many months or many years, whatever it was. And he said, yes, there were issues with the pipes towards the neonatal unit, and sometimes raw sewage or wastewater would end up on the floor of X, Y, and Z room. Now, that was all well and good, but what I believe they could have done with was a medical professional alongside this person to say, okay, yes, wastewater can cause this, sewage could cause this illness, it could cause this infection, but they didn't do that at all. It was like, okay, here is a plumber. And I remember at the time talking to people about this and literally saying, is that it? Is this all the defence has? A plumber? And I mean, if that was the case, that they simply did have a plumber and that was all that they had, then at least bring along a bloody doctor or someone that can at least add a little bit of context to what this individual is saying. It's no good saying, well, yes, sewage water could go on the floor, goodbye, and then just walk out of the court. You know, you need someone with some sort of expertise to say, okay, yes, if that has happened here, and this area has been contaminated, it could cause X, Y, and Z, particularly in neonatal babies. But that didn't happen. Now, to answer the second part of your question, was the evidence overwhelming? Again, I can only speak from my own personal viewpoint here. But for me, it was the totality of the evidence all taken into consideration. There wasn't just one specific case. I mean, yes, maybe the insulin one for a lot of people is a lot more damning than some of the others. But it's interesting when you sit there because when Lucy Letby took the stand, and bearing in mind, I'm just your average regular guy. You know, I'm not, I have no law degree or anything like that. So I'm sort of witnessing this from your average person's perspective. And it's the first trial or first court case that I've ever been to. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching Lucy Letby take the stand and give this evidence. And the best way that I can describe this is that it starts out with the prosecution asking these questions. And it's like this massive net. And then as the days and days roll on, it's sort of, this net sort of closes in and you can kind of see the picture as to what's taking place here or what is going on. And the prosecution barrister, Nicholas Johnson, had a way of describing things in which you could sort of picture it happening in your mind, which is quite odd considering this is like a medical setting. And quite naturally, there's a lot of medical terminology. They're talking about different drips being connected and different feeds happening, different amounts of feeds being administered, notes being filled out, handover sheets, blood gas reports. But then you'll come to like a certain occasion. This one stands out in my mind in particular. And I can't remember the nuts and bolts of this one, but Lucy Letby was filling in some sort of form. And Nicholas Johnson said, "So, okay, you're looking after this child here, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes, yeah." And then he said, "Well, your form here's been left half complete, hasn't it? Just minutes before this child collapsed." And Lucy Letby saying, "Yes, yes." And then he said, "Nurse Mary Griffiths nearly caught you in the act, didn't she?" And then she said, "No, she didn't." And she said, "Yeah." He said, "Yes, she did." He said, "Because Nurse Mary Griffiths came back onto the ward just a minute later. At 9:04 a.m, you can see here the swipe data. She's gone out of the unit. You've been alone with this child. And she's come back 2-3 minutes later, swiped back into this room or this ward, and you had forgotten to fill out the rest of that form because you were caught in the act. And then a few minutes later, this child had collapsed." And it's just the way... Now, I'm obviously paraphrasing that. That's certainly not the way that it was put across in court, but it's basically, it's the outline of what he said there. But the way in which he was able to describe certain things, as I say, you could picture these events happening in your own mind. The next question is from Telly Phaser Rose 3501. So hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. Many thanks for your question. And they ask the following. Did it seem as if Lucy was struggling to keep an impassive response, i.e. trying not to cry, etc., or was she genuinely not presenting as emotional? Now, as I say, I wasn't there for the entirety of her cross-examination, but I did witness a great deal of it. I didn't see any sign of emotion at all whatsoever. And what struck me was just how still she was sitting. Now, I've heard stories since the verdict's been announced that Lucy Letby had a comfort blanket and a stress toy under the desk and this, that and the other. I didn't witness any of that. But she just sat incredibly straight, very, very straight, very, very tall, and she didn't move. Her hands never moved. She wasn't gesturing with her hands at all. There was no touching of the hair. There was no touching of the face. There was nothing. Just this person who was... And I guess the best way that I can explain the expression on her face would be, imagine someone who is almost in a little bit of shock, but they're trying to concentrate on something. And as I've talked about before, blinking rapidly on occasion. And someone who's just focusing, listening intently as to what is being asked of her. But certainly no gestures, no flicking of the hair, no throwing up of the hands, no shaking of the head. And as mentioned in a previous video, the only time that I saw Lucy Letby change her personality or her demeanour was when Nicholas Johnson was about to catch her out on something, and she knew where this was going. And I'll just tell this again very briefly. But Nicholas Johnson was talking about this mother. One of the mothers had a quite unusual surname, I believe it was. It was either first name or surname, but I think on reflection it was the surname. And he said, this child's mother's got quite a strange, quite a bizarre surname, quite an interesting surname. It's quite hard to spell, isn't it? And Lucy Letby said, yes. And he said, yeah, it's quite hard to spell, isn't it? Yes. It was like a real... It was just a split second, but from every answer of Lucy Letby's being no, no, yes, yes, for all of the hours that I had witnessed, to her saying yes, it was quite difficult. Yes, it was like just, a real sharp response almost. I don't know whether she was just pissed off or what it was, but it was like for one split second, she became someone else. That's literally the only way that I can describe it. And Nicholas Johnson went on to say, yes, this mother's got, very, very hard to spell surname, hasn't she? Very, very difficult. I want you to spell it, please. And Lucy said, well, I don't think I could do that now. And he said, oh, come on, you've got a good memory. I want you to spell it for us, please. And then I'm not going to say the right spelling. I wouldn't know it anyway, but it was like TOVAUE C. And then he said, no, that's not right. And then he said, you were able to search on Facebook because you were reading the handover sheet from under your bed, weren't you? And it was just the way that this is, because as I stated in a previous video, when this was going on, I thought to myself, where the hell is this going? Like, where is he going with this? And then all of a sudden you thought, oh my God, that's how she could search for this mother on Facebook, because she was looking at one of the 7 sheets, one of the 7 handover sheets. 7 of these sheets that she had in her property, from memory, had this mother's surname on. So she was able to use this sheet in her house, look at the sheet and type in the name exactly so that she was able to search for it on Facebook. And by her not being able to spell it then in the court was kind of bolstering that idea, really, that you were looking at the handover sheet and you needed that handover sheet because your handover sheet was your, as Mr. Johnson put it, your memory refreshing document. That's what he would call it, the memory refreshing document. And then she said, no. But I think the reason why she snapped, back to the reason why she had that sort of over-the-top response, is that she knew where Nicholas Johnson was going with that question. She probably knew that he was going to ask her to spell it, and that she had 7 of those sheets in her house with that mother's surname written on them. And obviously, in court there, she had absolutely no idea how to spell it. So the following question is from case 9075. Many thanks for your question, and it asks the following. Could you please talk a little bit more about her parents? Were they there for the verdict, and do you think they still believe her 100%? Now, I wasn't there for the verdict personally. I believe that her parents attended for the first 2 or 3 verdicts, if I'm right. And Lucy then decided not to come up from the cells, and neither her parents nor Lucy attended the courtroom after that. So I can't really comment on the verdicts themselves. But a story that I haven't mentioned as of yet was the first day that I actually attended Manchester Crown Court. So just to give this a little bit of context, I drove from my house. It takes around about 4 hours to get to Manchester Crown Court by car. And having approached the court on foot, I've parked the car up and walking towards the court. You walk up around 4 or 5 steps to get to the main entrance. So I'm walking along there, not knowing obviously what to expect, to be perfectly honest. And as I sort of lift my head up, right in front of me are Lucy Letby's parents walking towards me, holding hands. Now, if anyone's seen photographs of Lucy's parents that have been put in the newspapers, the photographs of them are always, or pretty much always, taken from the same place. And I must have been standing literally where these photographs were taken, because it was the most surreal experience, having seen photographs of her parents plastered all across newspapers and online, whatever, for, the best part of the last few months. And then just, lifting my head up and then seeing it in real time, it was just weird. It was like almost as if I was watching a photograph in real life, as crazy as that sounds. That's literally the best way that I can put it. But yeah, as I say, I just lifted my head up and her mum and dad were walking towards me holding hands, wearing suits, as they always do in the photographs. From there, you go into the main entrance, you empty your pockets, you go through like an airport type scanner, like an arch. Then you go up the stairs and you're then in some sort of like long corridor. And from there, you've got lines of blue seats. I'll put a photograph in front of you here. You've got lines of blue seats either side of the wall, and her mum and dad will go and sit by themselves, sometimes accompanied by a friend. And it was quite distressing, to be perfectly honest, to see them in person. And I mean, you can just tell, can't you, by looking at people, that they are traumatized, really, to be perfectly honest, by what is going on. But at the same time, trying to stay strong. I think that's the best way of putting it. But it was difficult. I found that really, really difficult, almost as difficult, or probably on par with, to be perfectly honest, when you're in court yourself and then you start to hear the actual names of these children and the parents and the mother and the father. But bearing in mind, at that point in time, concerning this case in particular, the vast majority of the content that I was making was simply the live reporting at the court. Now, the reason for that is because it was really important for me and my channel that I follow reporting restrictions. It's no good me creating content and giving my opinion and this, that and the other, and then a trial which has been running for the best part of 9 or 10 months to then say, hang on a minute, we've got issues here. I mean, that was something that I was just not prepared to have happen, at least not from my channel or from myself personally. So it was important for me that I literally, word for word, only stuck to what was put out there in the public domain. Now, having sat in court and started to listen to the evidence, the first thing that struck me was the children's names. Now, as many people will know, due to reporting restrictions, these children are known in my videos as Child A, Child B, Child C, etc. But in court, the full names are all read out. The full names are given, the mother's name, the father's name, doctors' names who haven't been covered on the live reporting, they're all given as well as these children. I think that was probably the biggest moment for me personally when I stepped back and thought, hang on a minute, just the severity of it, the severity of this entire case actually hit me for the first time, because it's quite easy to go through and narrate the live reporting and Child A, Child B. It's quite easy to sort of separate what you're reading and narrating from the reality of the situation, I guess. But having been sat there and then being faced with these names, it, as I say, I wouldn't say it made this case more real for me, but it certainly brought home the severity of it, I guess, is the best way to put it. Anyway, many thanks for joining me for today's video. If you wish to leave a question for a future video regarding my attendance at the trial of Lucy Letby, leave a comment down in the comment section below. I'll be sure to check that out. And as always, in front of you very shortly, you'll be able to see the Lucy Letby playlist, which has all of the videos concerning Lucy Letby's trial and her case, all in one convenient folder. So feel free to work your way through those at your leisure. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.